Now we're joined by Janatan Sayeh. He's a research analyst focused on Iran at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. It's good to have you with us. Look,
great to be with you.
As I mentioned here, heavy movement of military assets, the big ones, okay, the most advanced carrier group encircling Iran, but apparently holding out for a deal that maybe, while rational, seems impossible for the likes of the Ayatollah to accept. Give up your intercontinental missiles, your nuclear program, stop calling America the Great Satan. Are we about to see action? What might that look like? What's about to happen?
So from Washington's perspective, they want to make sure that they keep all diplomatic channels open in case there's any backlash when it comes to the use of force, meaning the ball always needs to be in Tehran's court. Whether it was prior to the 12-day war or now, the messaging is very clear that we'll keep all avenues open, but it's about Tehran offering a compromise or a meaningful concession. Now, as you pointed out, they have three layers of deterrence: their proxies, their ballistic missile, and their nuclear program. They haven't meaningfully negotiated on the two, meaning they've never offered to compromise on their ballistic missile and proxies because they see that as something that could keep them in place. It's an existential threat to them if they were to lose this. So it really comes down to the fate of the enriched uranium and enrichment capacity. Again, prior to the war, Iran was not willing to negotiate on these things meaningfully to actually reduce that. It is unlikely for them to do that right now because from their perspective, how they see it is that the more they offer concessions, it's a sign of weakness both to their enemies at home, meaning political protesters, as well as their regional adversaries.
So this leads us likely to action again in the region here. And I know here in Israel, that's a real serious issue. There's nothing theoretical about it. I'm frequently asked, in the event of the U.S. taking action, if and when, will Israel partake? And in what role? How do you see this partnership maybe finally coming after the regime in Tehran?
If an attack were to be beyond just a symbolic strike, there is a very low probability that Trump would simply attack one or two pillars of the repression apparatus just to say he did it. But we're past that point. And given the buildup is realistically, if there were going to be a strike, assuming the buildup is not just to simply create a maritime blockade of Iranian oil exports similar to what they did in Venezuela, assuming it is actually about a major campaign against the Islamic Republic, then again, Tehran would see that as an existential threat, and realistically, it would also go after targeting Israeli sites. Again, Iranians really want to ensure that if there were to be an attack, the cost is really high on the adversaries' front. So because of that, of course, they're going to tap into their proxies, whatever's left of them. But the real question is, what is the extent of the campaign? Is it just going to go after ballistic missiles and the remainder of the nuclear program? Or is it going to go beyond that and actually follow through on its promise of actually supporting Iranian protesters? And that would realistically look like towards the end, a few last days of the June war. Towards the end of the 12-day war, we saw Israel going after the repression apparatus, IRIB, Basij and IRGC headquarters. And realistically, if you were to pair this campaign of a military strike with a diplomatic outreach campaign, you can ensure that the momentum on the ground doesn't die, and Iranians know that this is their chance to rise up. So any strike really realistically needs to go beyond just simple military assets of the Islamic Republic.
Yeah, I mean, taking out a wing of Evin prison as well. I mean, some of these really symbolic issues for the Iranian people, the ones they're taking so much issue with. Look, much of the Middle East, maybe everywhere but Israel at this point, seems pretty content with the new status quo, a massively weakened but still known regime in Tehran. Who seems to be for or against action when it comes to what might happen?
From the Iranian people's perspective, Israelis have been the only one that have been a true ally throughout this process. Of course, you have the Muslim Brotherhood-backed states, Turkey and Qatar. They're very unlikely to want to see this regime gone. It's played out well for them. They had their disagreements over Syria, but that is a done deal now. So they're increasingly cooperating. They help each other launder money. They both back Hamas. At the same time, you have Saudi Arabia that, again, although it's been trying to act as an intermediary between Tehran and Washington, realistically, they benefit from a weakened Islamic Republic that doesn't attack them like they did in Aramco, but also doesn't export oil and doesn't have a significant military threat against Saudi Arabia. So it is really challenging to see a region where most of our allies are actually in favor of the most and the strongest state sponsor of terrorism. So in this context, we're realistically looking at, of course, Israel, potentially the UAE, given that they're starting to, there's continues to be a rift between them and Riyadh's foreign policy. So but what's more important is the role of Europe. Where do they stand on this? Because for the longest time, they tried to appease the Islamic Republic. They tried to have an instex. They tried to violate U.S. sanctions. Now they might actually designate the IRGC as a terrorist group and actually expel their ambassadors from Tehran, which would be a good first step, but again, is not enough to actually follow through on their promises that they want to aid Iranian protesters against the Islamic Republic. That's a threat to them as well, given the attacks launched by Russia using Iranian weaponry.
Interesting set of factors all surrounding the specter of U.S. military action in a big way out in the Persian Gulf. Thanks for being with us, Janatan.
Thank you for having me.